And don't accuse him of abandonment when things get rough. If anything, it means that you're getting closer to him.
Back a couple months ago, we were thinking about doing this series called My Favorite Psalms, and I thought it would be good if you heard about other people's favorite psalms besides me. And so you'll hear from a couple different voices during these weeks. And back a couple months ago, I asked Wade, I said, Wade, October 18th is the day, would you get up and would you tell us about your favorite psalm? And he said, sure. So Wade, would you come up? I think Psalm 91 is his choice today.
Yes, Doug, you're correct. Psalm 91. In fact, I appreciated that phone call. I always take it seriously when I am given the opportunity to speak from God's Word. And when I got that call from Doug and he said, I need you to preach and I want you to go at your favorite psalm. And before he was even done, he said, just let him know what it is. I let him know that it was going to be the 91st right then, because there's just something about the wonderful majesty of the 91st Psalm as it speaks to the Hebrew nation, as it speaks to people like you and I, as to what it means to us. The most important thing to know about Psalm 91 is how it applies to us in the timing of events. If we try to look at Psalm 91 as just how this is written now and how it's going to apply to me today, it does apply to you, but there can be some distortions and some confusions that can come along and can really muddy the waters for you. And so hopefully today we'll be able to step away from that and to look at some things that will make a real difference in our life. It's a poem. The Psalms are profoundly put together in such a wonderful way. They are poetry. They express people's pain. They express their angst. They help us to talk about the lament in our lives, the pain and the hurt. We can talk about the joy and talk about the presence of the Lord. And if I put a title to this, it would be Keep Calm and Read Psalm 91. So I would like to just walk us through that whole poem together. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. For those of us that remember it way back, we pull it from the King James memory that talks about that secret place that we can go to. And that kind of thought, that kind of imagery is something that kind of captures our mind and our imagination to say, where is this secret place? I want to be able to go there. In fact, if there's a bus leaving, I want to get on it, and how much are the seats? I want to go to the secret place. Well, the secret place is something that exists for you and I and is very real. Verse 2 says, I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge. He is my fortress. He is the God in whom I trust. And as we look at these wonderful names of what he says about the Psalms, he says, I live under the protection of the Most High God. I dwell in this wonderful shadow of the Almighty. I walk there and his shadow falls across me. And that imagery of protection and safety quickly come to our mind. I trust in the God who created all things. He's got it in control. Verse 3 says, surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. And that fowler is referring to the old hunter that would hunt with a snare. And there's still people that do that today. We've seen kind of an attraction back to the old ways and back into the wilderness, and people that want to go out and catch their own food and capture their own animals. And they usually do that until the weekend's almost over and they go home and kind of get over it and go back to the refrigerator. But in the meantime, we kind of want to examine those things. He will cover you with his feathers. He will reach out and keep you covered. You will find refuge. His faithfulness will be a shield. It will be a rampart. We are protected and we are safe. And the tendency is to look at this and try to temporarily pull it out of space and time and saying, okay, if I can apply this to my life, I'm going to say these words and I get to skip all the bad stuff. I kind of get a get out of jail free card. In fact, when I was an early Christian, I heard preaching about that. Of people saying that if you serve God and if you love Him and you give Him your life, He takes good care of you and He protects you from bad things. That's a shallow way of looking at it, and that will get you into trouble. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 will fall by your side and 10,000 to your right side, but it will not come near you. What does the author say? You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. Because He loves you, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. So what is he saying here about the long haul that actually applies to people like you and I? He has this wonderful, inspired model of praise and worship and total confidence that God is really going to take care of everything that's going on. And God certainly does answer prayer. I can point to times that I've seen miracles that He has done, when I have seen that He's cleared pathways for me, and that I can know that He made my way straight because He did something for me. But I can also point to just as many, if not more times, where it seems like the wheels fell off. Literally. My family has always done a lot of camping revolving around Volkswagen buses. And the wheels sometimes literally fall off. And sometimes you have to stop in a rest area and take a motor out and put it back in after you fix it. And things like that. These things that develop character. So this doesn't mean that the troubles are going to avoid you, but in the long haul, at the end of we know who's taking care of us. Don't accuse Him of abandonment when things get rough. If anything, it means that you're getting closer to Him. There's one particular verse here that I brought to my mind. It was quite a few years ago. And it's talking about how your tent won't blow away. See that part? I remembered back years ago when my family we would all climb into the VW bus and we would head off to a thing that was known as Cornerstone. It was kind of an underground sort of Christian music festival. Sometimes 25,000 more people would show up. Call it a Christian Woodstock, as you will. And I just loved going it. My son got me hooked on it. And we would go there, and we went there like 15 years in a row. And the one that sticks out the most is the time we got there and got there a little early. And I kind of went overboard in setting up. We set up a tent for the kids to be over here, hopefully away from the van that was over here where we were. And then I set up another tent that was Mary Jane's kitchen. And we did a lot of cast iron cooking. And I actually set up a hot and cold running shower. I had all the comforts of home set up in what I called Wade's Court. And you had to pass by me to get to stay in this place. Well, we got it all set up. And I noticed on the way in, as we drove through the town of Bushnell, which is a town that's about that big, and we rode by a bunch of garage sales, and I'd noticed this really cool old-looking bike. And I thought that would be fun to have at Cornerstone. And so we got there and got all set up. And I got Mary Jane's tent, her cooking tent, all set up and everything ready to go. And I got John in the van, and we ran off to go look at and Mary Jane said, okay, go ahead, go check out the bike if you must. And so I went out and found, I don't know what all I found, but I did get the bike. And on the way back, the clouds suddenly started getting really dark off here in the horizon. And I thought, I better hurry. And as I was trying to hurry back, the clouds overtook me. And the clouds had rain that was blowing sideways. And it just kind of like wanted to blow the van off the road. And I thought, oh, I hope Mary Jane said, well, no, I know that Psalms 91 says that there's nothing going to happen to her tent, so she's okay. Well, I got there, and just as we were getting in, and the storm was just ripping and tearing, and the first indication that there might be a problem, of all the 150 or so little porta potties that were all set up, they were all flat. Every one of them was blown all the way over and flat. And I thought, that's not a good sign. And we always went way all the way back here over in the corner in this grove of trees. And I thought, oh, I hope Mary Jane's okay. I hope she's okay. And we got back there, and when I saw her, she had this look on her face like I'd never seen. And she was holding on to the corner of what had been that cooking tent, that family tent. And the pole that was in her hand was the only one that was left standing. And the rest of the tent was just kind of shredded and pointed toward Nebraska. And she looked like a drowned puppy. And I can't tell you what that look was like on her face. But I was really hesitant about getting out of the van. And she just stood there looking at me, and I thought, oh my. I thought Psalm 91 meant her tent wasn't going to blow away. Well, apparently that isn't what always it works out. But we got through it. We survived. She was a magnificent cook and made us all these wonderful things. But that was a special moment and a special look on her face that I've never seen since that time. So God certainly answers prayers. He certainly does do things in our behalf. But be very cautious of thinking that because you pray this prayer that you've suddenly got this dome of protection around you. That is not what that means. It means something very different. When we affirm our confidence in God's character during times of terror, during times of a pandemic, during times that we're not in control, we realize that it tells us quite clearly in the end of the book that we are going to make it. And we get to see Him again. We will see that resurrection. The Psalm and the Bible do not promise that a life is going to be free of problems, difficulty, and hardship. If anything, I can support more that you can plan on having more rough times when we serve the Lord, but that's okay. God allows difficult times to come to us. It does develop character. It makes us depend more upon Him. God is there to help, and we have to look at this scripture and to look at our lives through the light of eternity. Eternity. What's it going to look like? This psalm is very well known as the psalm of the military. Soldiers have been taught to love and to respect and to appreciate this psalm. It's the military psalm. And so I thought I'd get some help this week, and I reached out to a good friend that I have a lot of respect for, Christian brother, and some of you, a few of you will remember Jim Howard. Some of you won't, but that's okay. Jim's a retired captain, has a wonderful military history, and so I reached out to Jim. I said, Jim, what does Psalm 91 mean to you, a military guy? And he wrote back. He said, Psalm 91 has been passed down through the generations. My uncle said the chaplains said it at every field service during the World War II in their units. It was my father's favorite and used during the funeral service. My son, who was wounded twice in Iraq, used it. I kept a small plaque of it on my cubicle in the office wall where I served. War is so horrific and indiscriminate that even a staunch Christian will become fearful. Technology makes it all the more so. I would love to hear more what he means by how the technology makes it even more fearful. But he goes on, he said, you soon learn that the guys to your left and to the guys to the right are the most important people at the moment. Think about that. Whoever's to your right or to your left is probably the most important people right now. We're going through a lot of change and transition in this world. The new normal does not include what we just had a few months ago. And what we do have is the people that are in touch next to us, and they are our people for whom Christ died, that we have a ministry responsibility to. Jim goes on and said, you can imagine the looks on their faces when I explained to these guys that during our battle briefings that most of us will not survive the first 72 hours if war breaks out. I was truthful with them that we were a speed bump. Our lives were going to be traded for time to bring the full might of NATO, especially the U.S., to bear. The look on their faces, I explained the detail, was profound. One of my corporals asked why I was smiling. I told him, no matter what happens, God will be there, and that's enough for me. There's nothing that God can't protect me from, and that includes nukes. How do you know that, sir? 91st Psalm. Go ask the chaplain. He'll tell you about it. One of the things rarely talked about as soldiers, they don't want to die unknown. They don't want to talk to each other about it. They don't want to think about the possibility that maybe they aren't going to make it. And so much so that one of the things that soldiers know to do, and Jim described to us here, is that they will sew into the shank of their left boot their ID tag, their dog tag. The reason being, whenever that happens, when calamity occurs and things go south, it's most often that they will find the left boot. Isn't that interesting? And so by having their identity hidden in the left boot, then they know that there's a good chance someone will know who they were and what happened to them. Well, as we move along through this and we see these things that are happening, we realize that this isn't something that just makes us safe by praying this. This is something that makes us open to God's work and open to God's handiwork. And to realize that, yeah, He's got a real plan going on for people like you and people like me. When I look at this and I try to make sense of it, I find some great help. When you look at the story of the 3 Hebrew children that came before King Nebuchadnezzar, and the word had come out that they were not bowing down to the king, but that they were, in fact, refusing to do so. They got called before the king, and he said, fellas, if you don't obey when we blow the trumpet and the horn, the fife and the flutes and everything, if you don't bow down, we're going to throw you into the furnace. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, you could do that, and that's okay with us. And we know that God is going to take care of us. But if He doesn't, were they saying that this is magic words, it's going to make it simple and straightforward? No, they're realizing that maybe this isn't going to work out so well for me. But in the end, I'm going to know that I get to see the Maker. I get to see the Father. That I will go home to be with Him. That there is hope for people that are just not real sure. It's probably good to be sure. It's probably good to realize that in this world today, as we look at this new normal, should we be scared or should we be reaching out to that guy across the street, that guy that's over here, that lady that's over here, and say, hey, how you doing? How can I support you? How can I come alongside you? How can I help you? Yesterday, as the men met for prayer, we were talking about some of the little things that are important to us. Things that really mean a lot to us. It's interesting, it's mostly old guys, so we talked about how we like the beautiful fall scenes and we like the weather, and I like watching the rain that keeps showing up, and you can see it over here and over here and over there when you're driving down the road. And I pointed it out to my grandson. I don't know if he really hooked in as much as I did, but I'm easily entertained by things like that. And finally it came around to the essence of what's important for all of us. And Pastor Doug said it so well. And he said, the thing that I trust the most in is in the knowledge of that ancient statement that we can depend on the resurrection, that we are resurrection people, that we know that He is coming again, and we have this sure and certain hope of the resurrection. And the wonderful thing about it, the most exciting thing for me, is that I will be like Him. Can you imagine me being like Him? Really? Can you imagine you being like Him? One of these days, we will rise again. And when that's going to happen, we're going to realize that Psalm 91 was real, that He really does watch over us, and He really does care for us. And no matter how much calamity, no matter how much craziness is going on out there, we don't need to be afraid. We just need to lift the gospel to those out there that are hungry and that are needy and need to know that there's some hope in their lives because we've got that same hope. I'd ask the worship band if they'd please come and lead us in closing together.